D minor.
No, but I know that most of the ranking is D minor. I know that Bach piano concerto D minor, and I only play D minor concerto. So no joy, you need to know string subjects, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Shabbat Shalom. Welcome, everyone. We're going to start in just a minute. We have a lot of people coming in. That's great. And please find a seat. I'll just give everyone another few seconds. While we are waiting, I'll just mention that we are using this prayer book that might be in front of you in the seats, called Mishkan Tefillah, and it goes from right to left in Hebrew style. Again, Shabbat Shalom to
Shabbat
everyone.
Shalom.
Nice to see everyone here. Welcome to our guests, especially here this evening. Many of you possibly for the first time. Welcome to guests who are returning, and of course to our Temple family members. I'm Rabbi Paul Sidlovsky. My pleasure to be leading the service this evening, along with our wonderful in-house band, Bagels and Biscuits, who are going to be leading us in music. Brian Pelk will be leading a lot of the singing, and all the members here. I want to introduce Lee, Stephanie, Ryan, Angel, Alex, and Joe. And they are fantastic, and they have CDs available on Spotify and other things. Free, we're not selling right now, that you can listen to. And if you are interested, then you can help support them. But they are fantastic. We're very proud of that. It'll make the service beautiful. I want to say a special welcome. I won't mention everyone by name because I then will leave people out. But I want to mention, to thank all our religious leaders, clergy, and civic leaders who are here today in support of our community of all faiths and backgrounds. We are very happy to have you here with us, and we appreciate your support and caring. So, again, for those who may have missed it when I said it, we are using Mishkan Tefillah this evening. I'm going to be giving some commentary throughout the service. I don't usually do it to such an extent, but tonight that's what I'm going to do, to explain some of the prayers and sections of the service. But the prayer book, as you see, is in Hebrew and in English, also transliteration, which is the Hebrew written in English letters, so that you can follow along and understand what we're saying. The way it works as we get into the main section of the service, not at the beginning, is it's a 2-page spread. And on each 2 pages, what there is the prayer in Hebrew on the right-hand side with a translation, a direct translation of it underneath. And then on the left-hand side, 1 or possibly 2 readings on the theme of the prayer, not translations, but themes. So feel free to wander a little bit and look at different readings and interpretations throughout the service. So, we are going to continue now. We started with Hine Matov, which means how good, how pleasant it is for all of us to be together. It certainly is. We'll now continue on page 6. Again, we're going right to left. And we'll begin in the middle of the page and read responsive paragraphs. May the door of this synagogue be wide enough to receive all who hunger for love, all who are lonely for friendship.
May it welcome all who have cares to unburden, thanks to express, hopes to nurture.
May the door of this synagogue be narrow enough to shut out pettiness and pride, envy and enmity.
May its threshold be no stumbling block to young or straying feet.
May it be too high to admit complacency, selfishness, and harshness.
May this synagogue be, for all who enter, the doorway to a richer and more meaningful life.
And I'll point out before we continue that we also have given out these leaflets that contain some information about the service as well as a few of the songs that we are going to sing. The next song we're singing is not in the leaflet, but it's on page 12 in the prayer book. It's called Lechu Neranana from Psalm 95.
Lechu neranana l'Adonai, Naria l'tzorishenu. Lechu neranana l'Adonai, Naria l'tzorishenu. Yekadma fanav Toda Bizmiro Narialo Dekadma Fana Toda Bizmiro Narialo Bizmiro Narialo
And I definitely should mention that many of the melodies tonight that we're singing to traditional liturgy have been written by Bagels and Biscuits, including what we just heard, Lahuna Ranana, and including what we're about to hear, page 13, Shiru Ladonai, which is Psalm 96.
Shiru Ladonai, Shir Chadash, Shir Ladonai, Kol Haaretz, Shir Ladonai, Shir Chadash, Shir Ladonai, Kol Haaretz. Sing a new song to you, Adonai. We sing a new song of your glory, Adonai. Shir Chadash, Shir Adonai, Kol Haaretz.
And before we continue with lighting of Shabbat candles, which is back on page 2, I wanted to take a moment to explain something about the first section of the service that we are now currently in. Many of you may be familiar with exercising or playing sports, playing a musical instrument or singing. And for all of those activities, what they have in common is that it's important to warm up before you do that. You can do those activities without warming up, but if you don't warm up, it won't be as effective. You could even cause injury or not cause it to be as successful. A lot of people think prayer is different. A lot of people think that prayer is something that just happens spontaneously. It can, but Jewish liturgy, when it's organized prayer, is the same. It needs warm up. It needs a section to get ready to pray, to direct our hearts toward God. When we come into a sanctuary, we're admittedly not ready to pray necessarily. We're not thinking about spiritual things right away. We might be stressed. We might be busy. We might be preoccupied. When we come in, we need a little time to warm up, to direct our hearts and our minds toward something more spiritual. So we have songs and meditations and readings that help us to do that. So that is all part of what we are doing so far before we are ready to enter the service. So one thing we do on Shabbat to begin Shabbat properly is to light candles, and that is a symbol of light and joy entering our lives. As you know, I'm sure candles are used in many religions and in many situations to symbolize light and hope. So we do that to begin Shabbat. I'd like to invite Wendy Sidlowski to come up and lead us in the lighting and blessing. Again, page 2. does happen sometimes. I think the matchbox may be a little bit.
It's a warm-up.
Oh, the rabbi's defective.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat.
And we'll continue now on page 16 with Zamru Ladonai, and that is part of Psalm 98. Turn now to pages 20 and 21. And there we'll find a traditional Shabbat piece called Lechadodi. A little background to this piece. It was a kind of a Jewish mystical notion that Shabbat was like a bride to the people Israel, to the Jewish people. And there was a custom to envision a bride coming dressed all in white to greet us and we greet the bride on Shabbat. People used to actually go out into the fields and say these verses or sing these verses to go out and greet the bride. We now have remnants of that by standing during the last verse of this song that we're going to sing, facing the doorway to the sanctuary and when I signal everyone to rise. And those who are watching on live stream, I welcome you as well to this service. Please feel free to stand during that last verse and face your doorway as well as we symbolically greet the Shabbat bride. So we will sing on page 20 and 21, verses 1, 2, 5, and 9, with the first two lines before verse 1 as the chorus.
Lecha lecha dodi, lecha lecha kala, Nefesh Shabbat nekabela. Lecha lecha dodi, lecha lecha kala, Nefesh Shabbat nekabela. La 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 la. Lecha dodi, lecha lecha kala, Nefesh Shabbat nekabela. Lecha lecha dodi, lecha lecha kala. Tiferet v'lichia la 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 lechadut likrat likrat kala Nefesh Shabbat nekabela lecha lechadut likrat likrat kala Nefesh Shabbat nekabela likrat Shabbat lechu b'necha Yehi mekor haveracha Rosh Say b'machshavat chia la 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 lechadut likrat likrat kala Nefesh Shabbat nekabela lecha lechadut likrat likrat kala Nefesh Shabbat nekabela Hitoreri hitoreri kiva orech umiori Uri uri Kod Adonai alayich niglaya la 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 lechadut likrat likrat kala Nefesh Shabbat nekabela lecha lechadut likrat likrat kala Nefesh Shabbat nekabela Ohi v'shalom ateret bala Kam b'simcha u'b'tzola Toch emunei am segula Boi chala Lecha lecha dodi likrat likrat kala Nefesh Shabbat nekabela lecha lecha dodi likrat likrat kala Nefesh Shabbat nekabela la 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 lecha dodi likrat likrat kala Nefesh Shabbat nekabela lecha lecha dodi likrat likrat kala Nefesh Shabbat nekabela.
And we turn to page 27. And we'll continue with Lamdeni Elohai. The translation of this is below if you're interested in reading, in the middle of page 27.
Lamdeni Elohai, Barek v'hitpalel, Asor alekamel, Aloka pri b'shem, Al החירות הזאת, להראות נחוש לנשום, לדעת לייחל, להיקשר. להיקשר. למדני אלוהי, ברך והתפלל, למד את שפתותי, ברכה ושיר הלל.
I mentioned before about the warm-up section of our service. Believe it or not, everything we've done up until now was all warm-up. We have not even started to pray yet. You wonder why it took 40 years to wander through the desert. This is along those lines. But we seriously needed to get ready for prayer. I hope you've been inspired by the beautiful music and readings. And now we get to the actual prayer service itself. So we'll begin on page 26 with what's called Chatzi Kaddish or half Kaddish, which really is a marker that shows the end of one section of the service and the beginning of a new section. Kaddish may be a familiar term to some of you, most famously known for the mourner's Kaddish, Kaddish Yatom, which is said in remembrance of those who have died, that we say at the end of the service. This is a slightly shorter version of that, so that's why it's called a half Kaddish, partial. Then we go into the actual prayers of the service. On page 28, we have what's called the gateway to the service, or the call to worship, Baruch Hu. And there you can see the two simple lines in Hebrew, Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamvorach, Baruch Adonai Hamvorach leolam va'ed. The leader of the service sings the first line, everyone else responds the second line. It is saying, praise God, Adonai, the name for God, to whom praise is due forever, and everyone responds in affirmation of that. But in effect, what we're doing by saying these lines is saying, the leader is saying, are you ready now to pray after warming up? And we are answering yes. By affirming, praising God, we are saying now we are ready. So this is the gateway to the service. Just like you can't go into a house or a yard without going through the gate, you can't enter the service without Baruch Hu. Once we do that, we read a prayer on page 30, which is called Ma'ariv Aravim, which talks about God's creation of the world. As our eyes are now opened and ready for prayer, we appreciate the beauty of the world around us. This is an evening version of this prayer. There's a different one for the morning. And this talks about how God creates light and darkness and changes one to the other, puts the stars in the heavens, and so on. And then on the next page is a prayer called Ahavat Olam, on page 32, that is, the next two-page spread. And that means eternal love. And that talks about God's love for the people Israel specifically and for all people. And the way God shows love for the people Israel specifically is through the gift of Torah, the scriptures, the first 5 books of the Bible that God has given us. And then we continue on pages 34 and 35, which is one of the only prayers that spreads over 2 pages. It's very central. It's called Shema. It's called the watchword of our faith. It talks about God's oneness. And by extension, the idea that we say God is one, we're also saying we are one. We are unified through God. So all of us being here together is an expression of that, our unity, what links us together as human beings. And then we go on to Ve'ahavta on page 36, another passage from the Torah, from scriptures, which is basically a checklist of the ways that we can show love for God, when we should do it, how we should do it. So we will go through those prayers one by one. So let's start back on page 26 with Chatzi Kaddish, the half Kaddish, Reader's Kaddish, and then I'll ask everyone to rise after that.
Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
B'yom hadivrach irutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dekol beit Yisrael ba'gala ba'gala u'v'zman kariv v'imiru.
Amen.
Yehi shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam ul'al me'al maya yitbarach. Yitbarach v'ishtabach, v'par v'tromam v'tnaseh, v'tadar v'taleh v'talal, shmei dekudisha brichu, li'elam min kol birchata v'shirata, tushvechata v'nechemata, damiran v'alma v'imiru.
Amen. And please Join me as we together walk through the gateway into our service, page 28 for Baruch. Please rise. And we'll continue together with creation prayer, one of the ones with an interpretive theme. Page 31 in the middle, we can read together. This is an hour of change. Within it we stand uncertain on the border of light. Shall we draw back or cross over? Where shall our hearts turn? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? This is the hour of change, and within it we stand quietly on the border of light. What lies before us? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? Baruch atah Adonai ha'ma'ariv aravim. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on evening. Page 32, we'll continue with the singing of Ahavat Olam.
Ahavat Olam, Beit Yisrael, Gavta, Torah u'mitzvot, Chim u'mishpatim, Tanu limadata. Oh, amazing love. Oh, amazing love. Simple and ample and worthy of love. Oh, amazing love. Ahavat Olam, Beit Yisrael, Gavta, Torah u'mitzvot, Chim u'mishpatim, Tanu limadata. Make the works of the world and the words of the world taught with amazing love. Make the works of the world and the words of the world taught with amazing love. Ahavat Olam, Beit Yisrael, Gavta, Torah u'mitzvot, Chim u'mishpatim, Tanu limadata. Oh, amazing
pages 34 and 35. We'll continue with Shema.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem, Kivod Malchuto, Leolam Vaed. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, B'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha, U'v'chol me'odecha, V'hayu hadvarim ha'ele, Asher anochi mitzavecha, Hayom al levavecha, V'shinantam levanecha, V'dibarta bam, V'shivtecha b'veitecha, Uvlechtecha v'derech, Uv'shochtecha uv'kumecha, Ukshartam leot al yadecha, V'hayu letotafot bein einecha, Uchtavtam al mizuzot beitecha, Uvisharecha, Leman tizkeru, Ve'asitem et kol mitzvotai, V'yitem kedoshim le'Elohechem, Ani Adonai Elohechem, Asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, liot lachem le'Elohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem, Adonai Elohechem, Emet.
The next section of our service is called Geula, which means redemption. It is a section that centers around the prayer on page 40 called Mi Chamocha, which is also taken from the Torah, that from the book of Exodus chapter 15. These are words that the Israelites sang to God in praise of God after crossing the Sea of Reeds, the Red Sea, escaping Pharaoh and his soldiers to freedom after, as the Torah tells us, 430 years of slavery. So they were joyous and sang out, and we say these words now. One of my favorite passages about this is called a midrash. It's a rabbinic commentary, explanation, parable, says that when the angels and the Israelites were singing praises to God after crossing the sea, instead of joining them in singing and being flattered by it, God got angry at them. And God said to them, "My children are drowning, and you are singing praises? What are you doing?" In other words, we learn that even though we have cause to rejoice in our triumphs, in our successes, even in our freedom, even in our victory over those who have harmed us intentionally, we do not spend time rejoicing in their harm or certainly their death. That's certainly a lesson we can learn in our society today. For individual actions in our country, in our world, certainly certain regions of the world, need to learn to treat others all as children of God, worthy of respect, and we should not take any pleasure in rejoicing over their suffering, even though we may feel they deserve it, and there was no other option but to do it, as was the case in the story of the Exodus. We still stop short of celebrating or rejoicing or taking any joy in it. So we will continue now with that section of the service, and I'll mention that in addition to looking at the redemption of our people in the past, this section of Geula also looks to an ultimate redemption, a time when all of people will be redeemed. As we've been taught before, none of us are free until everyone is free. So until that happens, we still look toward a time when there will be ultimate redemption. So we'll begin on page 39, reading together at the top. Please join me. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there, except by joining hands, marching together. We'll join on page 40 in Mi Chamocha.
And the women dancing with their timbrels follow Miriam as she sang a song. Sing a song to the one who we exalted, and the wind And Miriam was a weaver of unique variety. The tapestry she wore was with every strand and every thread she crafted her delight. A woman touched with spirit, she dances for the light. And the women dancing with their timbrels follow Miriam as she sang a song. Sing a song, the one who was exalted, Miriam and the women. Miriam stood upon the shores and gazed across the sea. The wonder of this miracle never thought the sea would part with an outstretched hand, and we would pass to freedom and march to the promised land. And the women dancing with their timbrels follow Miriam as she sang a song. Sing a song to the one who we've exalted, Miriam and the wind And Miriam the prophet took her timbrel in her hand, and all the women followed her just as she had planned. And Miriam raised her voice in song, she sang with praise and might. We just lived through a miracle, we're gonna dance tonight. And the women dancing with their timbrels follow Miriam as she sang a song. Sing a song to the one who we've exalted, Miriam and the wind. And the women dancing with their timbrels follow Miriam as she sang a song. Sing a song to the one who we've exalted, Miriam and the women
Page 42. Continue with the next prayer called Hashki Venu, and I wanted to draw your attention to the first 3 lines of English, even though all of it is beautiful and worth seeing. But I wanted to talk about those first 3 lines briefly. We ask as an evening prayer that God causes us to lie down in peace. And we also ask that after we lie down in peace and are rested and renewed, that we rise up again to renewed life. And we ask that God spread over us what's called in Hebrew a Sukkot Shalom. Some of you may be familiar with the term Sukkah, or the holiday Sukkot, or Tabernacles, which is the holiday that celebrates the Israelites wandering through the wilderness after leaving Egypt on their way to the Promised Land and living in temporary booths. And they had temporary shelters when they did that. And that was their shelter and their protection during that time. So that was a Sukkah, and we ask that God spreads over us a Sukkah, but a Sukkah of peace for protection and comfort. So that is our wish as we lie down in the evening and certainly at all times. So we'll join in Hashki Venu, page 42.
Sukkot Shalom Aleinu. Baruch atah Adonai, Haporei 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 Sukkot Shalom Aleinu.
And on page 44, we continue with Vishamru, which is a song that states, as we see in the English in the middle of the page, that it is important for the Jewish people, the people of Israel, to keep Shabbat, as Shabbat is a sign of the eternal covenant between God and the Jewish people. It's a reminder that God made heaven and earth and rested on the seventh day of creation.
Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam b'ritolam. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam b'ritolam. Beini uvein b'nei Yisrael Oti le'olam, oti le'olam, Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat le'dorotam b'ritolam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai, Et ha-shamayim ve'et ha'aretz Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam b'ritolam. Uvayom hashvi'i shavat v'inafash, shavat v'inafash, Shavat v'inafash Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam b'ritolam.
The next section of our service is so central to our worship experience that is called simply tefillah, which in Hebrew means prayer. It is also called amidah, which means standing, because it is traditionally said standing. And it is also called shmona esrei, which means 18, because originally there were 18 prayers in this section. There was one added later after it was named, so it was really 19, but they didn't want to change the name once it was added. On Shabbat, though, that is during the week. On Shabbat, 13 of those 19 prayers are taken out because they are petitionary prayers. They are prayers that ask God for things that's not considered appropriate on Shabbat to do so on the Sabbath. So that leaves 6, and 1 is added extra to make 7, which is a prayer for Shabbat, for the Shabbat day. So in our prayer book, we have 7 different prayers, and we begin with the introductory section on page 46, asking God to open our lips that our mouths can declare God's praise. So I'll ask everyone to please stand, and we're going to start on page 46 and just keep turning the pages. Again, 2-page spread. Follow the Hebrew sections for the first few pages.
Adonai sefata tiftachu fi agi tehilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu ve'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohe Sarah, Elohe Rivka, Elohe Rachel, Elohe Leah. Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei Hakol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imaot, U'mevi Gula Livnei V'neihem, Leman Shemo B'Ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magen, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham Bezrat Sarah. Ata Gibur Le'olam Adonai, Mechaye HaKol Ata Rav Lehoshia, Mashiv HaRuach U'Morid HaGashem, Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed, Mechaye HaKol Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Verofech Olim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato, Lishenei Afar, Michamocha Baal Gevurot, Umido Melach, Melech Memit, Umechaye, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman Atalech HaChayot HaKol, Baruch Atah Adonai, Mechaye HaKol, Atah Kadosh V'Shimcha Kadosh, Ukdoshim bechol yom yahalucha selah, Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh.
Please be seated. And we'll continue on page 61. We'll read together at the top of the page, Prayer for Peace. Grant us peace, your most precious gift, O eternal source of peace, and give us the will to proclaim its message to all the peoples of the earth. Bless our country as the safeguard of peace, its advocate among the nations. May contentment reign within our borders, health and happiness within our homes. Strengthen the bonds of friendship and fellowship among all the inhabitants of every land. Plant virtue in every soul, and may the love of your name hallow every home and every heart. Praised are you, Eternal One, who blesses